From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Hello and welcome. Former Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, dies from COVID-19 complications after testing positive to the disease. President Buhari pays tribute to the late Abba Kyari, says his former Chief of Staff was, in his words, the best of us. Prominent Nigerians, including the Vice President, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, governors, as well as some former presidents, eulogized the late aide to the President. And the UK death toll from COVID-19 exceeds 15,000, making it the fifth highest in the world. Thus, you'll see business and sports.
On Business News tonight's Corporate Affairs Commission explains reasons for delays to assent of companies and Allied Matters Act bill by government.
And on sports news tonight, the Ministry of Youth and Sports Development sets up athletes' relief funds to cushion the effect of the coronavirus.
The body of the Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, has been buried at the Muslim section of the Qudus Cemetery in Abuja. The former presidential aide died after testing positive for the coronavirus. Family members, some government officials and sympathizers thronged the burial ground to pay their last respects to the late Chief of Staff, who was the first high-profile government official to die from COVID-19.
It was unclear how the President's Chief of Staff got to Lagos, but this is how his remains returned to the nation's capital. While the corpse is conveyed from the airport, sympathizers gather at the Defense House in Abuja. There was conscious effort to wear protective items and maintain physical distance. This was evident even while prayers were being offered with the corpse left in the ambulance.
It's a big blow to the administration. Abba Kyari was a pillar of support, not only for the president, but for the entire administration.
Then it was time for his journey to the Qudus Cemetery in Abuja. After interment, the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, who led prayers, reminded people that it was not necessary to converge for condolences in view of the need for social distance guideline. He urged for prayers for the late Abba Kyari. Some of those who were at the graveside react to the loss.
Well, he's a very wonderful person. Hate him, love him, but you can't question his loyalty to his boss.
Very hardworking. He was always on his desk by 7, always the last to leave. A dedicated aide of Mr. President, and he's going to be missed very dearly.
In Abba Kyari, we missed a very articulate, dedicated, diligent gentleman.
They say this death, as much as lives of others snuffed out by COVID-19, only means all hands must be on deck to fight the virus. The late President's Chief of Staff is the highest-ranking officer to have succumbed to the coronavirus.
The last assignment for anyone who is part of the burial of late Abba Kyari is discarding your face mask and getting a fresh one, an exercise that was carried out by the Nigerian Air Force, after which they have been burnt, as you can see far behind there. From the Gudu Cemetery here in Abuja, Ibrahim Adra reporting for Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the president has been paying tribute to the man he describes as the very best of us. President Muhammadu Buhari, however, said that he will not be available for condolence visits and instead urged that prayers be offered for the repose of the soul of the departed chief of staff. We'll bring you more on what the president had to say a little later. Now, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and his wife, Mrs. Dolapo Osinbajo, have joined the list of personalities condoning with President Muhammadu Buhari and the family of the Chief of Staff over his death. A statement from his office conveyed the message on behalf of himself and his wife, expressing sympathies to the President, widow of the late Chief of Staff, Mrs. Garba Kyari, his children, and members of the family. He prayed to God to comfort the family that he left behind. Condolence messages are also pouring in from the leadership of the National Assembly. The President of Senate paid tribute to Mr. Kyari through a statement signed by his special advisor on media, where he also condoled with President Muhammadu Buhari, the government and the people of Borno State. According to the President of Senate, Malam Kyari was competent, firm, focused, dedicated and a loyal aide who was a pillar in this administration and unassuming in his national assignment until his death. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, is sad that Abba Kyari died as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is now ravaging countries all over the world. He says the late Chief of Staff would be remembered for his selfless and dedicated service to Nigeria right from his days as a private citizen through the time he served as the Chief of Staff to the President. More reactions. Former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo says he received the news of Mr. Kyari's death with great sadness. According to Chief Obasanjo, the fact that the late Chief of Staff lost the battle to COVID-19 should be a solemn reminder to all that overcoming the virus requires a collective effort. Former President Goodluck Jonathan has also sent a condolence message to President Muhammadu Buhari on the death of his Chief of Staff. He sympathized with the Kyari family, praying that Allah grant him Al-Jannah Firdaus and strengthen his family during their moment of grief. Still more tributes, and this time from the Northern Governors Forum. The forum, under the chairmanship of the Plateau State Governor, Simon Lalong, has expressed shock over the death of Malam Abba Kyari. In a condolence message, the governor sympathized with his immediate family, the president, and the entire nation for what they described as a monumental loss. The statement adds, quote, Malam Abba Kyari was a deeply resourceful person who provided tremendous support to President Buhari and his administration and served Nigeria with patriotism, dignity, honesty, and passion. According to the governors, the forum has benefited from the friendship and support which the late Chief of Staff extended to members of the forum. They prayed God to grant his soul eternal rest. Now, the President's Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Mr. Garba Shehu, has described the late Chief of Staff as a man committed to his duties and national development. He, however, noted that there is no void in governance following his death, as there is a system in place to take care of his absence. He said it is up to the President to determine who takes the place of Mr. Kyari.
The late Abba Kyari is perhaps one of the least understood Nigerians. He had been very honest and a straightforward person. He had offered 100% loyalty to the president on account of his distancing from people. Distancing because Malam Abba is not corrupt, and he did not want any impression to go out there that he could be bought, as is the norm in some places, to subvert the wishes of the president. Many will have noticed that as soon as we picked the body from the airport in Abuja here, on our way into town, I put out a message on Twitter and Facebook. I said that as much as people should keep away, there's going to be a private funeral and burial. However, as it turned out, yes, quite a number of people did come uninvited on their own, and all our pleas that the social distancing be maintained, of course, was only delaying, the disposal of the body. So in the end, the Imam stood there and began the prayer, and there it was. A rallying point is no longer there. However, as you can see also, Malaba had been effectively away from the office for about 4 weeks until yesterday when he died. And the office ran. So that tells you that it's a process, there is a system in place by which whether individuals are there or not, the work will continue. As to whether he will be replaced soon or later, that is entirely up to Mr. President.
Now looking at the president's tribute to the person he described, titled his friend Malam Abba Kyari. The president said Malam Abba Kyari, who died on the 17th of April 2020 at the age of 67 from complications caused by the coronavirus, was a true Nigerian patriot, a loyal friend and compatriot for the last 42 years, and latterly my chief of staff. He never wavered in his commitment to the betterment of every one of us. The president further said that he was only in his 20s when he first met a diligent student. Soon after, he was blessed with the opportunity to study abroad, first at Warwick and then law at the University of Cambridge. But there was never any question Abba would bring his first-rate skills and newly acquired world-class knowledge back to Nigeria, which he did immediately upon graduation. The president isn't done yet. He says whilst possessing the sharpest legal and organizational mind, Abba's true focus was always the development of infrastructure and the assurance of security for the people of this nation he served so faithfully. For he knew that without both in tandem, there can never be the development of the respectful society and vibrant economy that all Nigerian citizens deserve. Now, on the political career of the late Kyari, President Buhari said, in political life, Abba never sought elective office for himself. Rather, he set himself against the view and conduct of 2 generations of Nigeria's political establishment who saw corruption as an entitlement and its practice a byproduct of possessing political office. Becoming my chief of staff in 2015, he strove quietly and without any interest in publicity or personal gain to implement my agenda. Next, the president clarified on Kyari's supposed secretiveness. Now, there are those who said of him that he must be secretive because he did not have a high public profile. But Abba was the opposite. He simply had no need, nor did he seek the cheap gratification of the crowd. For him, there was nothing to be found in popular adulation. He secured instead satisfaction and his reward solely and only from the improvement of the governance of this great country. The president also has something to say about his attitude to work. He said, working without fail 7 days each and every week, he acted forcefully as a crucial gatekeeper to the presidency, ensuring no one, whether minister or governor, had access beyond another, and that all those representing and serving our country were treated equally. And finally, on his general outlook in life, President Buhari explains he made clear in his person and his practice always that every Nigerian, regardless of faith, family, fortune or frailty, was heard and treated respectfully and the same. Malam Abba Kyari was the very best of us. He was made of the stuff that makes Nigeria great. Rest in peace, my dearest friend. And to his loving wife, doting family who survived him, I extend my heartfelt sorrow at your loss. When the news at 10 returns, we have more on the president's former chief of staff. We have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Geoffrey Onyema, to give us some insight into the life of the late Abba Kyari.